Hello everybody and welcome to the SDG Media Zone at Goals House. I'm Bruce Reynolds, Social Impact Director at Dentsu Aegis Network North America. Now, joining me today we have the amazing Jasmine Crowe. You are the CEO and co-founder of Gooder, which you'll tell us about.
Yes.
Great. And also with me is April Crichlow,
Yes.
Vice President of Global Customer and Ecosystem Marketing at SAP Ariba.
That's right.
Excellent, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So first, Jasmine, tell us a little bit about Gooder.
Yeah, so Gooder is a social enterprise startup, and we are working to solve two of the world's greatest problems, and that's hunger and food waste. So we help businesses connect with communities and nonprofit organizations in need of food instead of getting that food in landfill.
Now we're in the SDG media zone, so obviously we hear about the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
So you are addressing goal number 2.
Zero hunger.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, April, tell us a little bit about your role at SAP Ariba.
So I'm the head of global customer marketing at SAP Ariba, and I'm also our diversity and inclusion lead at SAP Ariba. So I like to say my day job is really thinking about our customers, their engagement, and thinking about how to help them with their purpose-led goals around the world. But also diversity and inclusion is near and dear to my heart. So a lot of what we talk about today here at the Goals House is really a passion of mine as well as my third job at SAP Ariba.
So Jasmine, let's start with you first. Can you just share with our audience a little bit how Gooder is using technology to close this food supply and demand challenge?
Absolutely. So hunger is definitely not an issue of scarcity. In the United States alone, annually, we waste about 72 billion pounds of perfectly good food. And what this amounts to in dollars is $218 billion we're spending on food that we never eat. So we see hunger as a matter of logistics. And what we've done from a technology standpoint is we've built a mobile and a web app that can connect on a point-of-sale system in any restaurant, which allows any closing shift manager or employee to simply track a very easy user experience, all of their excess food that would otherwise go to waste, request a pickup. We leverage a network of logistics partners who go and pick that food up and get it delivered to a nonprofit within a close, maybe 3 to 5 mile radius of that business. And what we're giving the business back is data and insights on the items that are going to waste. So that if across all of their restaurants, there's one item that's always going to waste every single night, we're allowing them to have the ability to make more predictive and production decisions on what it is that they're selling. Maybe now they can offer an item to customers because maybe customers are just missing it. The dashboard also gives them an opportunity to see their tax savings in real time, access community and environmental impact reports so that they can measure their carbon footprint and how they're giving back.
That's amazing. Now, how many markets are you currently operating in?
We are in 6 markets, and I really give a lot of that credit to SAPIO. In January when we joined, we were in 1 market, and that was my goal when I sat down with them. I said, hey, at the end of this year, I want Gooder to be in 10 markets because hunger is everywhere, and we now are in 6. So we are in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Charlotte, North Carolina, Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, of course, and then Los Angeles, California. And we'll be in 4 more by the end of the year.
Oh wow, and so you said four more by the end of the year.
Yes.
So let's just talk a little bit, if we can, about the scaling.
Yeah.
Like, how do you foresee scaling this? I mean, is it something you want to take global, or just the US?
I definitely want to take it global. So my goal is to be in 20 cities by the end of 2020. And I see that there is massive scale opportunity here because at Gooder, we're very asset light. So we don't own trucks and fleets of vehicles. What we've done is partner with companies like Postmates and Roadie, who have hundreds and thousands of drivers already on the road, already moving products and delivering food, and now we're giving them an opportunity to close the loop. So I look at it as creating a circular economy. If they go to a restaurant to pick up food, now they can also pick up this excess food and get that delivered as well, so that nothing goes to waste.
That is absolutely amazing.
I love it, yeah. I always say, Bruce, it's the best job I've ever had.
You can feel the passion, like just emanating from you. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, April, can you just tell us a little bit about your role? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. So overall at SAP Ariba, and why we, she mentioned she's part of SAP IO. but across all of SAP, we really do have a purpose-led brand and initiative. The line of business that I'm in is SAP Ariba, and it's all about helping the world spend better. SAP Ariba is the world's largest B2B marketplace in the world. It transacts $3 trillion in dollars across 3 million buyers and suppliers globally. And out of that, in the last 12 months, food and beverage companies transacted over 3 million documents worth $4 billion. And so if you think about the power of that scale of these customers of ours, corporations, and especially as we whittle it down to food and beverage companies, we feel like it's our responsibility to help guide, lead a lot of the discussion around zero hunger, to say if even 1% of that could be sustainably sourced, or if we could build ethical, transparent supply chains, for a lot of our, not only our food and beverage companies, but, since we're talking about zero hunger today, that example, it would mean millions of dollars annually that could help us build a sustainable food supply chain. We know that by 2050, we have 2.2 billion more mouths to feed, and so food production has to increase by 70%. So as our platform at SAP, we believe technology can have a huge impact on that from a digital supply chain perspective.
So now you mentioned B2B, and for our audience out there, everybody may know B2B is for business to business,
That's
and then
right.
B2C is business to consumer.
Correct.
So with your platforms, there's platforms helping businesses ultimately do business better.
That's right.
Just break that down a little bit further for me if you can.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think about the topic of purpose, it's easy for people to understand how the everyday person or the consumer can do that in the choices that they make from a spend perspective. So a lot of research shows that I think it's 80% of customers will buy from brands that they believe are doing something good in the world.
80%.
80%, and we're seeing this increase more and more. And so for us at SAP, how do we help our customers, as one example, have transparency in their supply chain? So if you know that your supply chain is ethical, it doesn't have slave or child labor, you're working with diverse suppliers, these are things that customers are very savvy on now. So as a B2B organization, you can have this brand narrative that says, we're here not to just, make a profit, we're here to help do good in the world. And knowing that customers are demanding it, purpose from a brand perspective truly does matter for brands. And I think from a technology perspective, we're really seeing, how SAP can help actually do that from a technology perspective. From a supplier diversity perspective, as an example, we can actually help source diverse suppliers on our spend management platform. So if you would like to direct your spend to a women-owned business, like Gooder, if you would like to direct your spend towards an underrepresented minority business, LGBTQ, a veteran-owned business, you can actually source that through the Ariba network. And buyers are now wanting that filter from a category perspective so that they can do that. One quick example is one of our customers recently joined what's called the $1 Billion Roundtable.
Oh, wow.
It's all about how they've committed to spending $1 billion of their B2B spend towards diverse suppliers. And we're seeing a lot more customers saying, I'm going to take this pledge. We're not going to buy from vendors that we've always bought from. We're now going to make sure that that's a diverse spend. So hopefully that breaks it down a little more.
It really does, yeah. And so speaking of diverse suppliers, Jasmine, I'd like to speak to you about that actually. So Gooder is working with diverse suppliers across the food supply chain. Why do you think diversity is important in tech today?
Obviously, I'm diverse in 2 boxes checked, right? I'm a female and I'm a woman of color. And I think I can't speak that narrative and want people to do business with me because of those things if I'm not walking that walk.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I set out to do with Gooder was make sure that we were a B corporation. And it took us over 1.5 years to get that certification. And that process was really diversifying our supply chain. What can we buy locally? that we may be buying overseas.
Yes.
And just before you go too deep into that, can you just break down for us what a B Corp is for those of us in our audience that may not know that?
Yeah, so a B Corp essentially stands for Benefit Corporation, which means we operate for the benefit of the public good. So we are a business that's a force for good, and that we've been vetted, deeply vetted by this society to make sure that we're doing the right things. So Gooder does a lot of things in the community, like we have pop-up grocery stores. We work with partners like Lyft to provide access to people to actually get to a grocery store if they live in a food desert. And we work with diverse suppliers as well. So I'm really happy to say that our core team right now is 100% diverse. You know, we have 4 HBCU graduates that are on our team, 4 women. And it feels really good, and we're always looking for diverse suppliers. Our labels, for example, that go on all of our packaging supplies are printed by a female-owned printing company. And that was something we set out to do. We were like, what is something that we're using every single day? Our labels. And now we found someone that's a woman that can print those for us.
So now speaking to diversity, because research shows that, you know, we are heading towards a world which hasn't been as diverse in history. So talk to me a little bit about that and kind of what are you seeing at the moment?
I'm seeing 2 really big trends, diversity and then the millennial acceptance of diversity. I think that's something that's super cool now. I recently read a statistic that said, to April's point, 91% of millennials will buy from a company that does good. That's a huge percentage. And when you think about in 2020, 50% of all the global workforce will be millennials, which means we're going to be controlling our own pockets, soon our parents' pocketbooks. And if we're going to do business at 91% rate right now with businesses that are doing good, that's amazing. I think a lot of millennials look at businesses that do embrace diversity across the spectrum, women-owned, diversity-owned, veterans, LGBTQ communities. They look at that as part of doing good business. And that's what I'm super excited about, that trend is changing because the world is changing. And I think businesses, advertisers, we've got to start really speaking to this growing population. We are no longer selling to yesterday. The future is coming and it is diverse, and they do care about what businesses are doing outside of their business.
So now we have 17 goals, sustainable development goals that we are obviously, you know, here to promote and ultimately tell the whole world about, for everybody to get involved, because these 17 goals are crucial to saving the planet and the future generations. So speaking about caring, or in the topic of caring, business with purpose means it means seeing like every source ultimately on your supply chain, like make sure it's free of forced labor, slave labor, child labor, things like that. So how does your platform, if you can speak to this, help businesses choose suppliers that are free from these things?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's number, if I look correctly, it's number 8, I believe. I'll go on this side.
Yeah, decent work and economic growth. Yes.
I think, you know, speaking to the point, I think it's another stat that 69% of companies will buy from organizations that have transparency in what they do. I think, you know, whether you're a consumer, you know, I'm a mom, and as an example, I really think about what's sourced in the products that go into making my children's clothes or making my kids' food, and I want to see that transparency all the way to the end as much as possible. You know, most organizations will not blatantly do business with an organization that might have unethical, you know, or something that's questionable in their supply chain, but usually it's in the 5th, 6th, 7th layer removed. And so through SAP Ariba and some of our partnerships with third parties that can do, like you were mentioning, this rigorous vetting to make sure that, you know, as much as you can go down the supply chain, there's a source. And I think that's very important for millennials, for corporations, for companies today that are really thinking about, I want as much transparency as possible. So I think it's imperative for brands to be talking about this and not saying, we don't know, we don't care. I think we need to take a responsibility to say, what is ethically sourced in our supply chain, and let's build as much transparency as possible. Now, needless to say, this is also not about blame and shame, you know?
Sure,
I think
sure.
a lot of it in the past has been like, you should be ashamed, you know? But I think it's about, let's be open and honest about what is in our supply chain, and let's then start to do good from there. And like I said, I don't think most companies will go out there, you know, with this as an agenda. Nobody wants to have this in their supply chain. But I think it's about being honest, digging, you know, through those layers. And organizations that we work with, they're really starting to think about this and working with SAP Ariba to do that.
So no, we're not looking to name and shame at all, but you know, which brands would you say are doing really well in this space, and which brands could do with some improvement?
Yeah, I think of, you know, again, speaking as an example as a mom, like Patagonia, you know.
That seems to be the flagship
Yeah, I know.
brand.
They're a B Corp.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so you just know like what you're putting on your kids is something where another child somewhere in the world has not, you know, been slaving over. I think we definitely want to do more of that. I think Nielsen is one of our customers. They do an incredible amount of work on this in terms of sourcing and making sure there's no supplier risk in the organizations they're dealing with. And then I think where we have some room to grow is in certain industries, you know, like with cocoa and chocolate and, you know, something that the world loves to delight in, you know, and again, no blame and shame, but I think it's really about how do we start to look at this overall, so, yeah.
Can you share anything with your journey with respect to which brands you've seen, either to Patagonia?
Yeah, I think Patagonia's really good. I love Ben & Jerry's. I think Ben & Jerry's is always willing to take that risk, you know? So a few weeks ago, they did this big campaign about how much money now is being made in the marijuana industry, yet how many people are still in jail for it. And I think for Ben & Jerry's to just make a statement and put that all over their social media, it caused a lot of conversation, but I think it meant a lot. I also like Bumblebee Tuna. They're working with SAP, and I've had some really good conversations with them where now you can, through SAP Leonardo and their blockchain, literally scan a package of Bumblebee Tuna and see where that was fished at, who that fisherman was, and just know that this is ethically sourced. So it just made me really want a tuna sandwich, and I'm not even like a tuna lover, but just the opportunity to be able to do that was so incredible, to like experience taking a picture of a QR code and seeing where this fish that I'm about to eat came from.
Right, and you know, we're here in the States, and the States is obviously, it's very, you know, leading in many ways. So Bumblebee Tuna, for example, and even this marijuana conversation, and also Ben & Jerry's. As we're talking to a global audience, not every country or even city may have, you know, access to these kinds of products, or the industry may not even be that mature to be able to create these kind of products.
Well, you know, another one, Bruce, is Adidas. You know, they are saying by 2021, they're gonna use 100% plastics, recycled plastics in their shoes. And as they're producing these shoes, they can't like keep enough of them. They keep on selling out every single time they release them. I haven't been able to get them yet, but they're using 100% recycled plastics to create tennis shoes. And that's a brand that's global.
Absolutely.
All over the world that people can access and soon have, you know, a part in making our whole environment more sustainable.
Absolutely, and plastic is a huge thing, because
Yeah.
I read a stat where it said really we shouldn't be using any more virgin plastic,
Yeah.
because there's so much plastic already in
It's already here,
existence.
yeah, it's right.
Therefore, we should be using just recycled plastic ultimately. And so, with respect to people who are, you know, overseas, not in the States, in other countries, as a purchaser, as a customer, are there any tips that you can give them as to how to be more sustainable, or at least align more, you know, with these goals? And then my next question, so you can start thinking about it, would be even those businesses that may not be in the States that, again, may be looking to better the planet for future generations, being aligned with the goals here.
I mean, I think it all just starts with research. You know, Google is an amazing resource, right? You can literally Google and see, hey, does this company have child labor? What are the negative news stories that are taking place? And know that there's a lot of fake news out there as well, but really, you know, social media is a really great conversation starter around companies that are doing the right thing. I'm wearing this bracelet to really celebrate reducing inequalities, and I think that that's something that we have to focus on. Leadership is something that is huge. How many women are on the board of directors? How many women are in leadership roles at the businesses that I'm supporting? Because that matters. And even still today in the tech infrastructure, I think only 30% of tech company jobs are held by women. That's very low. And when you look at the leadership roles of those companies, it's even lower. So that's a good start. Just kind of seeing who's behind the company helps you think about how they think. Because if there are more women that are in that decision room, if there are more diverse leaders in these decision rooms, it starts to reflect in how this company operates. And I think that that is true for a company that could be anywhere around the world.
Great, thank you for that. In April, you want to share lots
Yeah, I think just to echo, what Jasmine said, I couldn't agree more. I think it really does start with education and awareness. I think we're in a time where the social consciousness of these topics are so available and are there's so much discussion. You don't have to look too far to get that, that research and find organizations that are leading in these spaces. And so from a consumer perspective, I think, talking to other people that might be very socially and sustainability conscious and really doing that research of those brands that are leading. From a B2B perspective, I think it's the same thing. You will see brands out there that are really stepping up and leading the way. I think we can also look to certain countries as well. Beyond the US, where I think we do have a lot of consciousness around this. The UK is also doing a lot from a government perspective to ensure supplier diversity, especially in government contracts, and as well as Australia, in their procurement practices from an overall supplier diversity perspective. So I say look for the ones that are out there leading and then learn that best practice, because that often can be recreated wherever you are. Yeah.
Great, absolutely brilliant. So at the moment, I'm definitely from a generation where if you wanted to be sustainable or green, you kind of considered a tree hugger. And who really aspires to be a tree hugger, right? And ultimately, we are in a place now with the planet where climate change, is real, it is an issue. Life below water, where they're saying, in a few years there'll be more plastic than sea life. It's a crisis point.
Yeah.
Without kind of getting people into a state of hysteria, can you share how, number one, whether businesses can possibly communicate the good that they're doing better, and also what consumers can do? I mean, you said there's research, right? Obviously, consumers can go and Google things like this, right? About practical tips as well.
I mean, food waste is the #1 thing that they can do. I mean, it's the #2 clause to methane gas, which is what creates global climate change. So literally, reducing the food that you're wasting at home and in supporting businesses that are looking at how they're becoming a zero waste business. I think that's a big thing. I mean, 27% of everything in landfills in the United States is food. And that's a 50% increase from the time you're speaking about the tree huggers, right? In the 70s,
Yes,
80s.
yes.
That has increased 50%. So to April's point, we have 2.5 billion more mouths we're gonna have to feed pretty soon over these next 50 years. Look at how much more food waste we're gonna be creating if we don't start creating practices on reducing that food waste. And you're starting to see some of these things happen from a plastic side with a lot of restaurants and businesses getting rid of straws. But the reality is food waste, as that sits, it gradually produces methane gas, which is a leading contributor to global climate change. And any Google search will tell you that. A lot of people could do something very simple, which we forget about at the home, is just using our garbage disposal. So often we throw food away in the trash can and put it out for the curb, but if you're able to, just put it in the garbage disposal. And then that way it doesn't go into the environment. So that's like a simple change there. Maybe shopping by meal as opposed to just going to the grocery store. I've had to make a lot of these changes on my own. So now I'm saying, hey, tonight I'm gonna cook. I'll go to the grocery store, I'll buy what I'm gonna have for tonight. And I will usually keep a few things like fruit in the house, things that I just wanna have to snack on, but I'm no longer just going and buying groceries for the week or for the next 2 weeks, because so much of it will go to waste.
Those are great tips. Thank you. And April, from a business standpoint, can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I think from a B2B perspective, as you think about all of the 17 global goals, I think there's a huge value. I think we often look to the future, But I think brands, if they want to think about how to align their purpose to the SDGs and other topics like this, is to kind of look back in your history and look at why were you founded? What is your purpose? You know, purpose really does matter to your customers, to your employees that are advocates of your brand, to your partners and influencers around the world. And if you go back and really look at that narrative, I think you can authentically, because I think this is part of it too, is people don't buy anymore the fake, you know, hey, we're going to do a check mark for CSR.
Right, the greenwashing.
I think brands must look at why were they founded, what was their purpose, and then go from that history. There's probably a lot of value there that might be uncovered, and then think about how does that align with some of the 17 global goals. And I do believe that when you find that authentic tie, people will be drawn to that because it is something that is based on your history, your values, and the things that you believe in for a company going forward. So
that's a great note for us to conclude on.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.